Hey, it's Noor Azrieh. I've never actually introduced myself on YouTube, so maybe this is the time to do so. Hey, I host Canadaland's politics show, and holy shit, it has been a few days since Canada's consequential election, and the results are still sinking in. Mark Carney's Liberals have secured a fourth term, once again forming a minority government. But the real shocker here, to me at least, is that Pierre Poilievre didn't just lose this election. He lost his fucking seat. But let's backtrack for a second. The Canadaland politics team and I were up until sunrise on election night, watching the results roll in at a packed live election night watch party in downtown Toronto with some of you listeners and supporters. And as the night took its dramatic turn, I called up Djuric. She's a politics reporter from Politico and was on the ground at the Conservative headquarters, talking to party insiders, listening to Pierre Poilievre's speech, and witnessing this historic moment unfold live. This is the conversation Mickey and I had that night when it all happened. Let's get into it. Mickey, where the hell are you right now?
So I'm in downtown Ottawa, just steps from Parliament Hill at the Rogers Centre. It's a convention centre here in town, and this is where the Conservatives are having their headquarters. So I'm watching the results with party members and people who voted for Pierre Poilievre.
Talk to me a little bit about what the atmosphere in the room is like. What are the vibes?
There's tons of reporters here. There's probably about a couple hundred members of the public. This was an open event, but all the seats here, they're not filled at all. Earlier in the evening when CTV, they were the first to declare that it was a Liberal win. The vibe was very subdued, very quiet. One woman started bursting into tears. She said she didn't understand how the Liberals could win again. A lot of people in the room do not understand how the Liberals pulled this off. For many people here, their number one issue was housing and affordability, and they are worried about the future of the country.
Anything else of note in the room? Anything that, you think is important or interesting?
Yeah, well, a lot of people do not, necessarily accept the results of the election. Some people have flat out told me that they believe that the election is rigged. Other people are sharing stories that they have concerns about, voting booths and counting. Someone told me that they had concerns that pencils were used. Obviously, Elections Canada has debunked some of these narratives and false claims that are out there. But some people don't necessarily seem to be wanting to accept the results tonight. But I should say there is a vast majority of people here that do accept the results, and they also feel that in the next election, Pierre Poilievre will win, and they want Pierre Poilievre to stay on as leader.
Okay, we'll come back to that because I think that's super interesting. But I'm curious, any notable people in the crowd? Anyone you recognize?
Tony Clement, he's a former MP, is here. Pierre Poilievre, he's watching the election results from a hotel nearby. Don't know when he's going to show up, but he's also going to be arriving with his campaign manager, Jenny Byrne. But mostly it's just campaign staff and members of the public who showed up to watch.
I'm curious, any big surprises tonight?
It's 11:53 right now. We don't know if it's going to be a minority or a majority. We see Bruce Vanjoy ahead in the polls in his riding of Carleton, ahead of Pierre Poilievre, but then, not all those polls are reporting. So at this stage in the game, I think there's still a lot of unknowns. There's still a lot of to be determined moments ahead of us tonight.
I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier about folks talking about them wanting Pierre Poilievre to stay on as leader for the next election. What happens if Pierre loses, do you think?
Well, a lot of people in this room, they want him to stay because they felt inspired by him. I spoke to one person who considers himself an independent. He sways from voting Liberal to Conservative. He's not a complete partisan. And he said that when it comes to Pierre Poilievre, he's finally speaking the language that he's wanted to hear from a Conservative leader for so many years. And that's around the need to fix the affordability issues that we're facing in this country, the need to fix the housing crisis. And so this populist messaging that we have seen from Pierre Poilievre of giving power back to the people has really resonated with many people in this room. I spoke to another guy who's in his late 50s. He's never voted in his entire life. And this election, he voted for the first time for Pierre Poilievre. So Pierre Poilievre has really motivated the conservative base, but it seems like that he's also brought in new people to the party, and people feel inspired by him still. They feel hopeful, and they don't want to see him leave. That might be more difficult if he does end up losing his seat, though. That might be a harder decision for him to make.
Let's talk about his seat for a second. I cannot believe we're here. We're here in a moment where Pierre Poilievre's seat is up for grabs.
So I actually interviewed Bruce Fanjoy. He's the Liberal candidate in the riding a few months ago, and he's been really working the ground in that area for quite a long time. He had some time at Deloitte, but he's been mostly a stay-at-home dad, so this essentially has been his hobby. He has had the hours, it's his 9 to 5 to door knock. And what he told me at the time is that every time he would go to a door, he would say, you're really door knocking in a very blue riding, but you know what? Sure, I'll give you my vote to you. And then he says, I'll go to the next door. And then the same person will say that. So he's been convinced all this time that if he just knocks on enough doors and convinces enough people to vote for him, then he will. And the Liberal Party actually put in a lot of resources into this riding. So I guess we'll find out tonight how that actually shakes out.
How's the NDP doing?
They kept their one seat in Quebec. They're hoping to hold on to a lot more. They have some seats in Ontario that are at risk. The narrative that the New Democrats have started to take on in the last few days is that it was so important to stop Pierre Poilievre that it was essentially worth not helping trigger the fall of the Liberal government months ago, because they argue that would have led to a Conservative majority. So they're really trying to frame this narrative as the NDP, on behalf of progressives, made this effort to essentially sacrifice themselves and help the Liberal Party. And we've seen the New Democrats help the Liberals for the past 2 years through the Confidence and Supply Agreement. And I think they're paying the price for that a little bit tonight, because they are having to atone a little bit for past Liberal policies.
How are things lining up with the polls that we've been reading for the past few weeks?
Yeah, they're pretty close. The polls were kind of leaning toward a Liberal majority, and it's too early to tell at this moment. I think also what's interesting, too, is seeing the seats that potentially the Conservatives could be picking up in the 905 area. And I think that's also something that people didn't necessarily predict, and that could ultimately determine whether the Liberals get their majority or not.
Do we know anything about voter turnout right now? How many people have been showing up to the polls?
The advanced polling was 7.3 million voters, which is more than we've seen in a long time. It's a new record, and pollsters were projecting before tonight that we would hit voting levels that we haven't seen since 1993 or the early 90s.
Have you heard anything from your colleagues at the Liberal headquarters? Anything interesting there?
Yeah, I'm hearing lots of excitement over at the Liberal headquarters. They view this as a remarkable turnaround. It was just in December where they were trailing by the Conservatives double digits in the polls.
I mean, it is
Obviously,
remarkable.
Yeah.
It's honestly kind of astonishing seeing the numbers come in.
Yeah, just lots of excitement, lots of happiness that they pulled this off.
Well, we'll see how it all shakes up. Before I let you go, anything that just kind of stood out to you tonight?
I think that the Liberals are going to have a huge, huge task ahead of them of uniting this country. There's a lot of people in this room who feel like they have had to hide their conservative opinions, who have felt like their voices aren't valued in this country. And for them, 10 years of a Liberal government has been a lot already, and they are worried about what they can say out loud, if they will be accepted by their fellow Canadians for their conservative views. So a lot of people want to see this country remain united. I've heard it from a couple of people, too, that they are a little concerned about Alberta and the succession movement. possibly expanding out there. I've also talked to a couple people who are even considering moving out of the country because they want to be someplace where they feel like their conservative voices are heard, but also valued.
Thank you so much, Mickey. Have a great night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, folks, the election's over, but politics never stops. If you like this video, hit the like, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we're uploading things, which is more regularly these days. I know a lot of folks tune in to politics when elections are happening. It makes a lot of sense. This is the moment where everything comes together for the most dramatic night in Canadian political history. But I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. Politics doesn't start and stop during election season. It is constantly happening around you. It is constantly affecting the world around you. So don't go anywhere, because politics isn't. You can catch the show every Tuesday on any podcast app of your choice. If you like the show, if you like that we're making video versions of this podcast, let us know. Leave a comment. Email me at noor@canadaland.com. If you want to support the show, go to canadaland.com/join. And that concludes Canadaland's election coverage for 2025. Whoop.